Welcome back to the deep dive. We have a really interesting stack of notes to get through today. Usually we are looking forward, tech trends, future psychology, where the market is going, that sort of thing.
Right, the usual predictions.
Yeah. But today we're going all the way back.
Yeah.
We're pulling apart a text that is thousands of years old. And it's just 3 short verses long.
Very short.
But we want to see if it holds up against the stress of modern life. We are looking at Psalm 134.
It's a fascinating pivot for us. And honestly, this text is a bit of a hidden gem in the ancient literature we sourced. It's poetic, sure, but if you actually dig into the context, which is exactly what we're here to do, it offers a surprisingly robust psychological framework.
For how humans deal with darkness, right?
Exactly. And I don't just mean the sun going down.
Right. We are talking about night as a metaphor, which we will definitely get to. But first, we really have to set the literal scene. Because the notes emphasize that you can't really understand this poem without understanding where it sits in history.
You really can't.
It's part of what's called the Songs of Degrees, or the Songs of Ascents. Break that down for us. What are we actually looking at here?
So imagine a road trip, but you're on foot, and it is entirely uphill. Historically, there's this collection of 15 psalms, numbers 120 through 134. And these were essentially the playlist for pilgrims traveling up to Jerusalem for the great annual festivals.
Because Jerusalem sits on a high ridge?
Yes. So no matter where you are coming from in the ancient world, you are ascending to get there.
And this wasn't just, a solo hike. This was massive crowds.
Huge crowds, families, villages, entire communities traveling together. It's loud, it's chaotic. And the earlier songs in this collection really reflect the grit of that journey.
They talk about the heat, the danger of bandits.
The need for unity when people are just getting on each other's nerves.
Yeah, it's very real, very human. But Psalm 134 is the finale.
It is the grand finale. It's the last track on the album.
So they've arrived. The journey's over.
They have arrived, but look at the timing. That's a crucial detail the text gives us. They haven't arrived at noon for a parade. The sun has gone down.
The city is quieting.
Exactly. The formal ceremonies are over. And this psalm captures that specific transitionary moment between the high energy of the arrival and the silence of the night.
Which brings us to our mission for this deep dive. We want to figure out why this ancient song about night watchers in a temple matters to you, the listener. Because, let's be honest, you probably aren't guarding a literal temple gate tonight.
Probably not.
But you might be feeling a different kind of darkness.
That is the goal. We want to extract the insights here about faithfulness and obscurity. What do you do when no one is watching?
Right.
And how do you maintain a sense of purpose or connection with the divine when you are in a dark season? How does that actually strengthen your trust in God?
Let's jump right into the text itself then. Verse 1, it opens with a command. It says, "Behold, bless ye the Lord, all ye servants of the Lord, which by night stand in the house of the Lord." Okay, so stand by night. Who are we talking to here?
We are talking to the night shift. Historically, these are the Levites or the priests tasked with the overnight duties in the temple. And I think it's important we de-romanticize this a little bit.
Oh, for sure. Because when we hear temple, we think Indiana Jones.
Right.
We think gold everywhere, huge choirs, smoke, absolute spectacle.
And during the day, that was totally true. The temple was a sensory overload. You had sacrifices, crowds, symbols, chanting. It was the absolute center of national life. But at night,
It's totally different.
night and day, literally, the crowds are asleep. The music has stopped. It is just shadows and silence. These men aren't there for the glory.
They're there to keep the lamps trimmed, to make sure the fire on the altar doesn't die out.
And to guard the perimeter.
It's maintenance.
Yeah.
It's security. It's the stuff that nobody notices unless it goes wrong.
Custodial work. And it's incredibly lonely. There's a distinct shift in the atmosphere.
That contrast really stands out in the research notes. You go from being part of the chosen people in a big loud crowd singing these upbeat songs to being one guy standing next to a flickering lamp while everyone else is in bed.
It feels isolating.
Very isolating.
And that is exactly where the first major insight hits. The psalmist, who likely represents the crowd that is heading home or heading to bed, turns to these lonely workers and says, "Bless the Lord."
It's validation.
It is. It's saying, we see you, and what you are doing in the dark is just as much worship as what the high priest did in the sunlight.
That completely reframes the definition of worship then. It's not just the performance. It's not just the big show.
Not at all. In fact, this text argues that worship is what happens when the performance stops.
Wow.
It's about continuity.
Hmm.
The fire on the altar was never supposed to go out. Someone had attended at 3 a.m. If those guys fail, the system fails.
So let's pivot to the modern application here. Theme 1 in our stack of notes is faithfulness in obscurity. This hits hard in our current culture.
Yo, absolutely.
We live in an economy of attention. If you didn't post it, did it happen? If you don't get the credit, does the work even matter?
It's the tree falls in a forest question, but applied to human value. We are conditioned to believe that visibility equals value.
But Psalm 134 is pushing back against that.
Hard. It's saying that the unseen hours are actually where your integrity is forged.
The notes mention some modern equivalents to the Levite night watch. Who are the people standing by night today?
Well, the most visceral example, and I think anyone with kids will feel this, is parents. The 2 a.m. club.
Oh, I know that club well. Walking the hallway, bouncing a baby, dead tired, wondering if you'll ever sleep again.
And no one is clapping for you. You aren't getting a performance review or an end-of-year bonus. You are just keeping a tiny human alive. It's exhausting, and it can feel incredibly lonely.
But in the spirit of this psalm, that is a temple duty.
Yes, that is a sacred act of service.
The source material also lists caregivers.
Right. Sitting by a hospital bed, monitoring someone's breathing. Or security guards, first responders, nurses.
People whose work literally allows the rest of society to sleep in peace.
Exactly. And there's also a spiritual dimension mentioned in the notes, prayer warriors.
That's a term you hear a lot in religious circles, but the principle applies broadly, doesn't it?
It does. It's the people who carry the emotional or spiritual burden for others in private. Maybe you're worried sick about a friend and you're up at night praying for them or just holding them in your thoughts. That is standing in the house of the Lord. You are holding the space.
The takeaway there seems to be about the audience of one.
Precisely. Integrity is what you do when the applause is absent. If you can realize that your unseen consistency matters to God, that He is actually watching the night shift specifically, it changes how you view those boring, lonely tasks.
You aren't just killing time. You are maintaining the fire.
That's a perfect way to put it.
That is a powerful shift in perspective. Let's move to verse 2. The instruction gets physical here. It says, "Lift up your hands in the sanctuary and bless the Lord." Now, I want to pause on lift up your hands. To a modern Westerner, that might feel a bit specific to a Sunday church service. Why this specific gesture?
It's cultural, yes, but it's deeply psychological, too. In the ancient Near East, lifting hands was the universal sign of surrender. You are exposing your vital organs. You are showing you have no weapons.
It's pure vulnerability.
Exactly, like a child reaching up to be held, or a prisoner surrendering. It is an admission of need. But think about the context again. They're doing this in the dark.
That's the kicker. If I lift my hands at a concert, I'm part of the vibe. I'm signaling to everyone around me that I'm engaged. But if I'm standing alone in a dark room and I lift my hands, who is that for?
It's an act of will. It's not performative because there is no audience. And this brings us to the second major theme in the notes, the discipline of praise.
Discipline isn't a word we usually pair with praise. We think of praise as a feeling. I got a raise. I feel great. #blessed.
That's reactive praise. And that is easy. Anyone can be grateful when the sun is shining and the bank account is full. But the command here is to bless the Lord in the night.
And night here is a metaphor.
In almost all poetic literature, and certainly in the Bible, night symbolizes chaos, danger, uncertainty, or grief. It's the time when you cannot see the path forward. It's the dark night of the soul.
So the psalm is commanding these people to worship right in the middle of their uncertainty.
Yes, and that is exactly why it's a discipline. You don't feel like lifting your hands when you're depressed or broke or grieving. Your body wants to curl up. It wants to protect itself. It wants to hide.
So the instruction to lift up your hands is almost counterintuitive. It's asking you to do the opposite of what your human instincts say.
It's embodied cognition, the idea that your body can lead your mind. By physically posturing yourself in surrender and openness, you are teaching your heart to trust, even when your emotions are screaming panic.
That is fascinating. It's not fake it till you make it. It's posture until you perceive it.
I really like that phrasing. It's anchoring yourself. When you bless the Lord in the dark seasons, financial strain, emotional exhaustion, you are making a defiant statement. You are saying, this darkness is not the final authority, God is.
It maintains the lifeline. Because if you stop talking to God because things are dark, you just isolate yourself even more.
Exactly. Silence creates a void. Worship fills that void with a reminder of who you are talking to. It reestablishes the relationship precisely when you feel most abandoned.
Which sets up verse 3 perfectly. We've had the call to bless the Lord. We've had the action to lift your hands. Now we get the response. And the
Wow.
source notes say this is likely a dialogue.
Most scholars view this as a call and response structure. So picture the scene again. The pilgrims are outside the gates, maybe packing up their donkeys, shouting to the night watchman inside, "Hey, you who are staying behind, bless the Lord."
And the night watchmen shout back.
Verse 3 is their reply. They shout back to the departing crowds, "The Lord that made heaven and earth bless thee out of Zion."
It's a shift change. We've got the watch. You go in peace.
It connects the people leaving, who are going back to their normal lives, their farms, their daily struggles, with the presence of God that stays in the temple. But look at the title they use for God. This is critical.
The Lord that made heaven and earth.
Why that title? Why not the God of Abraham? Or the God who saved us from Egypt?
Yeah, usually in the Old Testament, God is defined by history, the God who did this specific thing for us. But here, it's cosmological.
It's the creator perspective. This is our third deep dive theme. If you are standing in the dark, feeling small, feeling vulnerable, you need to know that the God you are talking to isn't just a local tribal deity. He isn't just a statue in a room. He is the architect of the entire
It
universe.
zooms the camera all the way out.
All the way. It grounds worship in ultimate reality. If he made heaven and earth, he is capable of handling your night shift. He is capable of sustaining your life.
The notes use a great phrase here. Perspective reduces panic.
That is the key phrase for me. When we lose perspective, the darkness feels infinite. My problem feels like the whole world. But when I remember Maker of heaven and earth, my problem becomes a speck in a universe he holds together. It doesn't make the problem go away, but it sizes it correctly. It makes trust logical, not just emotional.
And there is a beautiful reciprocity here, too. The servants bless the Lord in verse 1, and the Lord blesses them in verse 3.
It's a cycle. Worship isn't throwing words into a void, it is relational. You honor God's reality, and God responds with blessing out of Zion from his presence.
Okay, so we've unpacked the history, the psychology of the night watch, and the theology of the Creator. But let's land the plane here. How do you actually apply this? Because I don't want to just leave you with, well, that's a nice ancient poem. The question is, how does this information strengthen your trust in God tomorrow?
We need to talk about rhythms.
Rhythms of gratitude.
Right. The night watchman had a shift. He had a routine. He didn't decide every night if he was going to show up. He just did. We need to build spiritual shifts into our lives, especially when things are chaotic.
What does that look like practically for a modern listener?
It can be very simple. The source suggests ending the day with a specific reflection. Before you crash, look back at the day, even a bad day, and find one thing to bless the Lord for.
It's closing your own internal temple for the night.
And beginning the morning the exact same way. Before the phone, before the email, acknowledge the Creator. It sets the baseline for the day. And don't ignore the physical aspect.
The lifting hands part?
It might feel weird to modern people, but try it. When you are overwhelmed, physically open your hands, palms up. It signals to your nervous system that you are releasing control. It's a somatic practice that supports your spiritual health. It is a physical act of trust.
I think there's also a huge social application here based on the pilgrims shouting to the watchmen.
Yes. Who are the night watchmen in your life? Who is doing the thankless work?
The person keeping the project running while everyone else takes the credit. The mom staying home. The janitor. The person praying for you.
Be the pilgrim. Shout a blessing to them. Send the text. Say the words out loud. I see you. What you're doing matters. The psalm itself functions as encouragement to the lonely workers. We should be doing that for each other.
It's amazing how a text, this old, literally ancient poetry, touches on such modern nerve endings. The need for validation, the struggle with anxiety, the power of perspective.
Human nature hasn't changed. We still fear the dark. We still need to know that what we do matters. And Psalm 134 gives us the answer. Quiet devotion is never wasted. The Creator sees you, even in the dark.
The Creator sees you. That is a thought to hold on to.
It changes everything. It validates your existence and your struggle.
Before we wrap up, we always like to leave you with a challenge, something to chew on. The source material asks 2 questions that I think are worth answering for yourself today.
First, where are you serving without recognition? Identify that space. Name it. Don't resent it. Validate it as your night watch.
And second, how will you apply this information in your life? Specifically, how can you cultivate worship even in a difficult season?
Are you going to wait until you feel like it? Or are you going to lift your hands in the sanctuary tonight? That is where the trust is built, not in the feeling, but in the choice.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive today. It's been a really refreshing look at the night shift. We'll catch you the next deep dive. Take care.